Every spring for 6 years, April showers bring a flood of North Country poems to the Adirondack Center for Writing. And when the deluge subsides, what remains is a poem village. An average of 200 poems get submitted, and the works appear for everyone to read. But in the era of COVID, where and how we read the poems has changed somewhat. Here to tell us about PoemVillage 2021 is the assistant to the director at the Adirondack Center for Writing, Baylee Annis. Hello, Baylee.
Hi, Paul.
Baylee, what is PoemVillage?
PoemVillage is a really cool public display of poetry that takes over our downtown in Saranac Lake every year, and it's inspired by a program in Vermont, and it's a way to get involved in poetry in the North Country.
Well, you mentioned downtown Saranac Lake. In the years when we are not in a pandemic, where are the poems displayed?
The poems are displayed throughout downtown around Main Street and into Broadway, and it's a couple blocks of just a straight line corridor of poetry right at eye level. And it's really beautiful and pretty epic. The first year we did it, it was actually confused for a protest display. So we had some questions of people who were confused, and was there some sort of demonstration? And they were surprised and delighted to see that it was poetry from neighbors and friends.
I love it. No, it's not a violent protest being planned. It's just poetry.
Just poetry.
So how is the display of poems different during the COVID era?
Yeah, so we adjusted last spring because it was right at the beginning of the pandemic when we were set to launch. And we now are delivering little daily batches of poems to read at your leisure in your inbox if you're subscribed, and then also at our website and social media. So you can view them at your own pace throughout the weeks that they're available.
Sounds fantastic. Now, why are poems helpful to read right now during a time that is optimistic but still may remain hard for many of us?
Yeah, there's still a lot of questions and uncertainty, and we've also had a long winter, somewhat solitary and isolated. And being able to read poems, especially from people with ties to the region, is such a relief. Last year, we heard from an ER nurse who was able to read poems in her breaks in between her services at the ER, which is pretty impactful and gives her a little burst of delight. She was so excited to have these little surprises come in and to be reading about poems from kids in the neighborhood who are writing about their favorite animal, and hearing from neighbors that she had no idea who would be writing poems. And it's pretty delightful to be able to have those moments of connection and lightness, especially when you're serving as an essential worker.
Well, Baylee, we have a treat now. We're going to hear one of this year's poems from professor and author Roger Mitchell of Jay, New York.
My neighbor John. My neighbor John has a sign out front, half hidden in knee-high grass. It says he wants a law repealed that I want kept. He lives on oxygen. He wheels around the house. His car is back to the front door, just in case. When his dog kept failing to show last year, I wanted to ask, but didn't. The last time I'd seen them out together, Kyra Lee could barely walk. They rescue us, he said one day through his gap-toothed smile. I never asked what it was he had to be dragged back from, but it must have been slowly, over crushing disappointment, or flung into a tub of love that never gelled. I don't ask, and never will, why he opposes gun control. His reason has a life I've never lived. It knows needs that aren't mine, but it knows what rescue is. And that's enough for me to stop and chat about the grass, the many kinds there are, how fast it grows. Like me, he mows it. Sometimes, though, he lets it go.
Thank you so much, Roger, for sharing that very timely poem with us. And just to be clear, Baylee, you don't have to be a professional poet at all to submit a work. Is that correct?
Correct. This is for everyone.
What do you find enjoyable about reading the poems?
Just the benefit of being able to see the work from these poets over several years of submitting. We'll have some kids who start as a kindergartner, and you can see them over, 5 years of time really grow and develop as poets. And also seeing people who have never done it before write their first poem for this project, and hearing about that and sharing it with their friends and neighbors is just really lovely.
It sounds like there's a lot of enthusiasm for this project. How supportive do you find the community when it comes to PoemVillage?
The community loves it. We get questions year round about when they're coming back, when is it going to be. The local businesses that offer their window space to us are always so excited, and they actually get a little giddy. Sometimes they give us little treats or candy if we're hanging up poems. And there's been a lot of community support as from our sponsors too, who are local organizations and businesses who are still supporting the program, even though it might not be as easy as other years. So it's very, very loved, and we're excited to offer it again.
That's great to hear that the support is there. When may we read the poems on the Adirondack Center for Writing website?
You can read them right now, and we'll continue to add to them until the last week. And until May 10th, you'll be able to view all the poems in its entirety for about a week before that.
And for the writers out there who have never submitted a work to PoemVillage, when may we submit our poems next year?
Yeah, the good annual reminder is around March time. We keep it open before then. So if you have some poetry coming up during winter, please send it in. But right around the Ides of March, when you're getting a little low, that's the time that you can be thinking about the poem that you want to put into PoemVillage.
And I understand that even after April, the poetry projects do not stop. What can we look forward to?
Yeah, we are really excited to bring back our Raining Poetry Project. This is coming up in May and June. They'll start to be painted, and they'll be viewable in Saranac Lake throughout the summer. There are local and regional poems that we have excerpts of, and we paint them on the sidewalks to be discovered on a rainy day.
Well, how is this possible to have the words show up only when the sidewalk gets wet?
It's pretty delightful to see, but we paint the sidewalks when they're dry with an adhesive. So it seals the sidewalk as dry, and everything around it darkens. So as it rains, you see this dark sidewalk reveal these light poems right before your eyes, only a couple seconds after it starts raining.
That's almost like magic, isn't it?
It is magic. Poetry is magic.
It really is. Well, I'd like to thank you, Baylee and Roger, for all that you do to promote a love for reading and writing in our region.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
To learn more about PoemVillage and the Raining Poetry Project, you may head to AdirondackCenterForWriting.org. We also have links for you at mountainlake.org.
Spotlight is supported by the Glenn and Carol Pearsall Adirondack Foundation, dedicated to improving the quality of life for year-round residents of the Adirondack Park.